All right. Ever been stuck on a plane because of like a runway issue?
Ugh, the worst.
Total bummer, right? But get this. The way we check those runways for like damage or dangers, it's still super old school.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
We're talking boots on the ground, walking it out, looking for every little thing.
Yeah, it's very manual, very time consuming.
But what if we could do it all remotely? Super fast and safe too.
That's what we're getting into today, how tech, like, AI and drones and all that is changing how we make sure those runways are good to go.
Exactly. So before we get all futuristic on this, let's take a sec to picture how it's done now.
So imagine you're an Air Force engineer. You've got this runway to inspect, right? After let's say, a simulated attack.
Oh, wow.
You're all geared up, head to toe, walking for hours, scanning every inch, looking for damage, debris, maybe even unexploded stuff.
Oh, that's intense.
Yeah, it is. It's time consuming, it's physically demanding, it's potentially pretty dangerous too.
No kidding. Makes searching for a lost contact lens seem like a piece of cake, except, well, the stakes are a little higher.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why the work that people like Randall Pietersen are doing, it's so huge. He's a U.S. Air Force engineer
Okay.
and a PhD student at MIT. He's really at the forefront of using drones to do these airfield assessments all remotely.
Drones, huh? So no more of those intense walks, just send in the tech.
Exactly. Drones can cover so much ground so much faster, and no one has to actually be on the runway. Saves time, obviously, but it also just makes it way safer, especially if you're dealing with things like unexploded ordnance.
So drones are like our eyes in the sky. Gotcha. But can they really see everything? I mean, how do they know if it's just a rock or something more dangerous?
That's where hyperspectral imaging comes in.
Okay, this sounds cool.
It is. Think of it like this. A normal camera, like what we use, sees a limited range of colors, like our eyes.
Right.
A hyperspectral camera, it sees way more detail, information that we just can't see normally.
Ah, I see. So they're giving the drones supervision.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they can fingerprint things based on what they're made of,
Yeah.
like their spectral signature. So a harmless rock and an unexploded munition, even if they look the same to us, the camera can tell them apart.
Wow, that's amazing. So we've got these drones with supervision covering huge areas. But how do we make sense of all that info they're gathering? Seems like a ton of data.
Yeah, and that's where AI steps in, specifically something called deep learning.
Okay, so like AI is doing the thinking for us.
In a way, yeah. These algorithms, they're trained on tons of images, information. They learn to recognize patterns, make decisions based on what they've seen before.
So they're kind of like detectives going through all that data, finding anything suspicious.
Exactly. And they do it in real time, too. So if there's a problem, someone knows about it right away. Faster response times, repairs happen quicker, and ultimately a safer airfield.
Cool. All right, so we've got drones, we've got hyperspectral imaging, we've got AI. It's pretty clear this is changing the game for airfield assessments.
Absolutely.
But let's talk about the guy behind all of it, Randall Pietersen. What's his deal? What's his story?
He's a fascinating guy, really. Like his whole path to this is a great example of, how different fields can come together.
Okay, so he's not just an engineer.
No, he's also like a total adventurer
Yeah.
into ultramarathons, skydiving, rock climbing. He likes to push limits.
So we're talking real-life action hero who's also a brilliant scientist.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And all those different interests, those experiences, they all feed into his research. He sees things differently, makes connections other people miss.
I like that. Makes you think,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes the best solutions come from the people who are willing to, I don't know, try new things, think outside the box.
Yeah, for sure. And for Peterson, this isn't just about developing cool tech. He wants to solve real problems, make things better.
Speaking of real problems, it sounds like this tech could be used for way more than just airfield assessments.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The
Yeah.
potential is huge.
Well, then let's get into it. What else can this stuff do? Where else are we seeing it?
Buckle up, because we're about to explore how drones and hyperspectral imaging are being used to tackle some of the world's toughest challenges. So, one of the biggest areas where this tech is making a difference is landmine detection.
Yeah, that's a huge problem, right?
Mm.
Especially in places where there's been conflict. Those things just stick around, even after the
Sure.
fighting's over.
Exactly. It's a big danger. But instead of sending people out to, find them,
Yeah.
risking their lives,
Yeah.
we can send drones with the hyperspectral cameras. They scan these big areas super fast, and they can actually see those landmines.
Wow. So it's like we're giving these humanitarian groups a way to clear those areas, make them safe again, without putting anyone at risk.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't stop there. This tech it can be used for all sorts of things. Like, think about agriculture.
Okay, agriculture, that's a big jump from landmines.
Maybe? But the tech, it's the same idea. Farmers, they need info, right? About their crops, the soil, if there are pests, diseases.
Yeah, of course.
Usually that meant walking the fields, taking samples, just looking around. But now, imagine drones with those hyperspectral cameras flying over the fields, gathering data on everything, the health of the crops, how much moisture's in the soil.
So it's like giving farmers this like X-ray vision of their land.
Exactly. And then the AI steps in, analyzes all that data. The farmer can see which areas need attention, where to irrigate, fertilize, even spot disease or pests early on.
That's incredible. So we've gone from safer runways to clearing minefields to like better farming. What else have you got?
Well, let's talk about emergency response. Think about a natural disaster, an earthquake, a hurricane, a flood, something like that.
Yeah.
It's chaos, right? And first responders, they need information fast to figure out what's going on, where to send help. These drones with the hyperspectral cameras, they can provide that info. They can see the damage, maybe spot survivors who are trapped.
So they're like the eyes in the sky during a crisis.
Exactly. They can see things like gas leaks, structural damage, stuff that could be dangerous, and they can get to places that might be too risky for people to go.
So we've got safer air travel, clearing landmines, better agriculture, disaster relief. Is there anything this tech can't do? It feels like we're just getting started.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There are so many possibilities. Remote sensing, AI analysis, using drones, all this stuff. It can change how we interact with the world in so many ways.
It's kind of mind-blowing, honestly.
It is. It all goes back to innovation, to people like Randall Pietersen who are, pushing the limits. But it's important to remember this is still a new field. There are challenges, ethical stuff to think about, and we always got to be pushing to make it better.
Right. It's not just about the tech itself, but how we use it. Make sure
Yeah.
it's being used responsibly, ethically.
Absolutely.
Well, speaking of Peterson, what's he up to next? Where does he go from here?
Well, he's finishing up his PhD at MIT, and then he's being deployed to Guam.
Guam, wow. What's he going to be doing there?
Well, it's a place where, all this technology, the drones, the hyperspectral imaging, it could really be put to use. Kind of brings his whole journey full circle, right?
Yeah, totally. From, walking those runways himself to maybe overseeing a whole fleet of drones doing the work. It's amazing. But looking beyond just Peterson and his work, what do you think the future holds for this tech as a whole?
That's a great question. I think we'll be, figuring that out for years to come. There's just so much potential. We're just getting started, really. But I think it's safe to say that remote sensing, AI analysis, drones, all of that's going to play a bigger and bigger role in how we do things. From, everyday stuff to the really big challenges.
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty exciting to think about. But before we go too far into the future, let's bring it back to, what this all means for our listeners. What are the key takeaways here?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we're living in a time where technology is just, exploding. And all these advances, they're changing everything. How we live, how we work, how we see the world.
It's not just about cool gadgets, right? It's about solving real problems, making our lives better, safer, maybe even a little more sustainable. And sometimes those solutions, they come from the most unexpected places, from people who aren't afraid to, think differently.
Exactly. And I think everyone should be aware of what's happening, what's possible, and, think about how it's all being used.
Yeah, be informed, be engaged, maybe even a little inspired.
And a little curious about what the future holds.
Speaking of the future, something tells me this tech's got a few more surprises up its sleeve. What about you? What other areas do you think could benefit from all of this? What other problems could we solve with these tools?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I guess we'll save those for another deep dive.
For sure. But before we go, I wanted to circle back to something we touched on earlier. The whole idea of using this tech to keep our infrastructure safe, like bridges, tunnels, all that stuff. That's something that affects everyone, right?
Absolutely. Think about all the infrastructure in our cities, towns, bridges, tunnels, power lines, pipelines. It's all got to be inspected, maintained. And that's always been, time-consuming, expensive, sometimes dangerous.
Yeah, it's like trying to find a tiny crack in this huge structure.
Yeah.
And if you miss it, well, the consequences could be pretty bad.
Yeah, exactly. But imagine using drones for that. With those hyperspectral cameras, it could scan those structures, find those tiny cracks, things we might not even see.
So it's like giving those inspectors superpowers. They can see what's going on inside, find problems before they become disasters, and then The AI can analyze all that data, help us figure out what to fix first, make sure everything stays safe and running smoothly.
Exactly. We can go from like reacting to problems to actually preventing them. And it goes beyond just safety, too. Imagine using this tech to monitor those pipelines, make sure they're not leaking. That's good for the environment, saves resources.
That's a great point. So it's safer bridges, cleaner environment. It's really amazing to think about how something that started with checking runways could have such a ripple effect.
It really shows the power of innovation, right? And the people like Randall Pietersen who are pushing the boundaries. But it's also a reminder that we got to be thoughtful about this stuff. As AI gets more powerful, we got to make sure it's used ethically, responsibly.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
The tech itself is just a tool. It's up to us to decide how we use it, make sure it benefits everyone.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's something we all need to be talking about, thinking about as this all keeps developing.
So for our listeners out there, what's the message? Stay informed, stay curious, and don't be afraid to ask questions. The world's changing fast, and technology like this, it's a big part of that.
Whether it's safer air travel, clearing landmines, better farming, protecting our cities, it can make a real difference.
Mm,
But it's up to all of us to make sure it's used the right way.
yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep imagining what's possible.